What is up, you all? Welcome back to episode one of the Parent Network. Listen, we are going to get into my journey of motherhood in this first episode so that I can just introduce my own philosophy, if you would say, my thoughts and my journey, and so that it would really be just a blueprint for the life of others to be able to come into their story and then to courage to know that number one, you're not alone. And number two, parenting, when it happens, we're never prepared for it. But as we grow and we become intentional with healing, things change, narratives change, our perspective on parenthood changes. And so I want to share that with you all in this first episode before we get into the deeper conversation that we are going to have at the Parent Network. So I started my parenting journey, motherhood journey at the age of 19. I was 19 when I got pregnant, and I had no clue of what that was going to look like. I had no idea really what I was doing. All I knew was I was going to have this baby and figure it out. And at the time, I was in a relationship with my oldest son's father, and he was in the middle of his final exam in high school, y'all. And I remember sending that text out, and I'm like, wow, okay, like this is it. This is the thing. We're gonna be parents. My. Um, the first person, though, y'all, that I told that I was pregnant to after walking out of Planned Parenthood, crying my eyes out, was my brother. Now, he got all of the news firsthand about a lot of things that happened in my life. And I remember calling him and saying, like, brother. And he's like, what's wrong? Because, I'm crying. So you can't call your siblings, especially older siblings, older or younger, anyone that you're connected to crying because they're going to be in a panic. Like, what is going on with you? So I'm crying and I'm like, I'm pregnant. And he is like, um, oh man, okay, well, what does that look like for you? What are you gonna do? And I'm like, I'm gonna keep it. I'm gonna keep the baby. And he's like, okay, well, calm down. And then from there, I called my mom and shared the news with her. And, my mom is a special character. She was like, well, I knew that, I knew that was going to happen. I'm like, okay, thank you for that. But we're going to get through this. We'll do this, we'll do that. So she started kind of going into strategy mode and planning, what it was going to look like. And I said, okay, I had a calm. I felt, at ease. Once he was done with his test, he responded to the text message. And from there, we started the journey of realizing, okay, we're going to be parents. Now, it was not an easy journey because, again, we're kids, we are kids, 18, 19. I don't even think he was 18 at the time yet. I think he was 17. Um, and he made a commitment to sticking this out with me. And for that, I'm grateful. Um, we shared with, his family the news, and some were excited while others were not. And rightfully so, when you think about it in hindsight, you think your 17-year-old child, his 18, 19. Yeah, I was 19, y'all. Yeah. 19-year-old girlfriend saying, oh, we're going to have a baby. That's not the plans that you have for your child. And as a mother now, I can totally see that, the anger, the disappointment, the hurt, all of the emotions, honestly, that come up when you think about, oh my goodness, this is going to be a thing, that I'm going to be a grandmother, and my child, who is literally a child, is going to be a father and or a mother. So I remember when we shared with his mom the news, and she was very disappointed. She was very hurt and, very upset and angry, and rightfully so. As like I said, I see it in hindsight. In the moment, y'all, I did not understand it. I was like, what? Like, why? Like, why are you acting this way? But again, as a child, that's the immature part of us. We don't know. We don't understand. We see things from our small perspective. We don't have the wisdom yet of life. And so she was talking to us, and she was expressing how she felt. It was just like, okay, well, in my mind, I'm like, well, at the end of the day, I'm still going to have this baby, and so you're going to either support us or you're not going to support us. And it took a toll on our relationship, my relationship, her son's and her relationship, and just everything, like, because the news was dropped, and it was just like, I can't even think about how to process this. This is not what I desired. And so as I journeyed into, my pregnancy, I made some inner vows. I made some decisions that, I was never going to depend on anyone to try to help me. Now, this is a caveat. If you have the support, use the support. That is one of the biggest things that I can stress when it comes to parenting. Use the support that you have if you have it. If you don't have it, I understand. And if the support is manipulative or if it's shady, I understand that as well. But if you have support, use that support because it truly does take a village. So during the pregnancy, our relationship was estranged. She needed time to take care of herself, to deal with her emotions. I needed time to figure out, heck, girl, you're about to be a mother and you don't even know what that looks like. One of the things I can say though, y'all, is I knew that I didn't want to raise my child how I was raised. Now, I'll get more into that in another episode, but essentially, I didn't want my child to feel like their voice didn't matter. I didn't want my child to feel like their desires were going to be unmet. I didn't want my child to feel like they were alone. I didn't want my child to feel like they were small. And those are a lot of things that I felt in my childhood. So I made it a mission to kind of brace myself to protect him. It was something within me that I knew that I was going to do. And so about 5.5 months into my pregnancy, his mother and I, my son's mother, my son's father, mother, and I got together, and we talked, and we kind of hashed things out. And she shared her heart, I shared my heart. And from there, that began the start of the new part of our relationship. Because prior to, we had a great relationship. But when we both kind of separated to see, like, okay, what's the bigger picture here? The bigger picture is a new life is coming into the world. And I don't want to not be a part of this. And I don't want you to not be a part of this. But we have to figure out what that looks like for our relationship. And so as we talked, as she and her son, they mended their relationship, things progressed. I had a beautiful baby shower, filled with love, filled with family. And then boom, y'all, it was time. It was time to have this baby. I remember a part of my birth story that I'll never forget. His mother was recording me, and I was trying to go through the railing of the hospital bed because the contractions were so intense. Now, for my parents, my moms, I know that I'm not the only one that has experienced back labor. When I tell you that is the most intense pain, and I wanted to have a natural birth, so I did not have an epidural. I had an amazing nurse, amazing team. I loved my OBGYN. Shout out to Dr. Noel. I loved him. He was an older, like, swaggy, fly OBGYN. And he was just ready for whatever I was ready for. I remember going into the hospital the night before I actually was admitted, like, it's time. I can't do this anymore. Like, my water is leaking. And he looked at me and he was like, no, it's not. He sent me home and he said, go walk. And I did, y'all. I walked up and down every hill, squatted, anything you could think of, I possibly tried because I was over it at this point. Y'all know that fourth trimester because that's really what it is. The ending of the third into that fourth trimester, it's just like, oh my God, get the baby out, please and thank you. And so I remember the night or the morning into the night that my son was born. I had no anxiety. I was just ready to tackle this new journey of life. Sure enough, I labored for 14 hours and pushed for 1 hour, and my 8 pound, 11 ounce baby was born at 8:11, y'all. And from there, my whole world changed. You have this life that is dependent on you to raise it, to take care of him, to nurture, protect, provide all of the things that encompass motherhood and parenting. And so I embarked on the journey, his dad and I, and we did what we knew to do. Now, the first year was how can I put this, y'all? The first year was exciting for me. It was like, I'm going to dress him up. I'm going to do all of these things. I love Winnie the Pooh. And so his theme was Winnie the Pooh. And he was the cutest, chunkiest, healthiest baby, very calm, very mellow. And after the honeymoon phase of parenting wore off, I had to make some decisions on what it was going to look like for the rest of my life. Because again, I'm 19. I was in college and dropped out because I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to commute. I don't want this. I don't want that. Still in a selfish mindset. But I knew that I needed to take care of this child. So we are journeying together through this. His dad and I, at this point, we're still together, but I wanted to take another course of action. And so I remember my mom suggesting to me, like, oh, you should try school bus driving because it will help you, figure out your career path, all of these things. Now, y'all, I did that and I did it pregnant. I started school bus driving when I was 4 months pregnant and finished when I was 7 months pregnant. It took me 3 months to finish. And I drove that bus until it was time for me to go on maternity leave. And once I came back from maternity leave, of course, I went back to the job and I figured, well, Ashley, I guess you better go back to school, child. I've always had a love for learning. I am indeed a lifelong learner. And I've always loved children, always worked with children. So naturally, in my mind, it was a thing at the time as well. Get your degree in child development. So I remember going back to community college for my AA degree in child development while I was working and mothering and trying to maintain a relationship. And I remember one of the things that was told to the both of us was that something was going to have to give, whether it be our dream of being together, our dreams of, him playing football, something was going to have to give because as parents, you can't do both. And sure enough, something did give. We ended up breaking up, but we're on amicable terms. We didn't have any, strife or any of those things. Not yet. Let me put that caveat in there, y'all. Not yet. And so as I'm in school, doing what I need to do, his dad was doing what he needed to do. We ended up getting into some type of disagreement. And honestly, I can't even tell y'all what it was about. I can say this though. I remember my mom speaking a lot of things to me, It's your baby. You need to make decisions for you and your child, all of those things. And that was because she never had the proper support she needed with raising her children. And so it was like, the survival mindset. And what happened? I embraced that same mindset, the survival mindset. I have to make sure I do what I can for me and my child, which ultimately placed this wedge between his father and I and made it difficult for us to parent together. Needless to say, we ended up in court, y'all. We ended up in court, and we're still very much young. We ended up in court, and the judge told us that we needed to go to parenting classes and do some mediation before he would even see the case, because we didn't have any real substantial evidence. There was no abuse or any of those things, and that's why I said I can't even remember why we were in court. We ended up going to, I think, like one mediation, and after that we got together and we sat down and we made a deal, honestly, that we don't need outside people in what we're trying to do. We know that we're not together, but at the end of the day, we want to work together for the betterment of raising our son, because he didn't ask to be here. We chose to bring this life into the world. And from that point on, we made a deal. We made a pact to work together. That had to be, 13 years ago? Now, 13 years ago, we were, 20, 21, 20 and 21, somewhere along the way. But the maturity kind of kicked in, and we still had a lot of growing to do. But that maturity kicked in that young to know, okay, listen, your mom saying this, my mom saying this. We have outside forces that are saying a lot of things, but what is it that we want to do? And I think that's important to note when we are dealing with the co-parenting situation. There are always going to be outside voices that are going to try to influence you individually. But you have to learn how to silence the voices of others and work together as a unit. This is why it's important to have those value systems in place. And at the time, didn't know nothing about that. We were just trying to make sure that he was a part of his son's life, and I was mothering, he was fathering, and we could co-parent and coexist together. We both knew that the baby mama, baby daddy drama was not going to be named among us. We don't even call one another baby mama, baby daddy. That was just like this thing in my mind where I was like, no, child's son, child's father, rather, excuse me, mother of my son, however you want to call it. But baby mama, baby daddy, it just, we weren't going to do that. And we haven't. So as we, journeyed together, he made some choices that ended up, kind of pausing his tangible relationship with his son, but he still was very much a part of his child's life. But again, when we make certain choices, it happens. And I remember at that point in my journey of motherhood, going into this place where I got scared because I was like, oh no, are you reliving things that your mother did, things that happened with your mother? We're going to put a pin there, y'all. So at this point, I really had to learn to lean into the support that I had. And when I tell you the support supported, the support supported, I was always able to have a break for myself. I was always able to feel comfortable with leaving my son with his grandmother, with his grandfather, or then picking him up, and then dropping him off, supporting him, in t-ball, in football, and flag, all of the things that he wanted to do. He had the childhood that I did not. And it brought my heart so much joy because like I said in the beginning, I knew that I didn't want to give him what I had, but I didn't know how to go about that. But as I learned to trust the support that I had and to lean into the support that I had, it all started to work out. Now, as he grew up, we're talking 7 years old, he became a big brother. I entered into another relationship and ended up getting pregnant intentionally. And boy, oh boy, was that a ride of a lifetime. I am now 25 with two boys and in a bachelor's program. And I'm like, okay, yes, I can do this, I can finish school. I'm going to get this amazing job, because now I have a degree, two degrees, all of these things. I wasn't planning or any of those things. I just knew that if I have the paperwork, the degrees, I'll be able to live the life that I wanted. And unfortunately, it did not happen that way. I ended up having to pause my bachelor's program because I got pregnant and had a second son and did not have that same support that I did with my first child. It is what it is. I'm not going to lie about it. And I had to learn how to pivot. I had to learn how to think quicker with what I had. And in that relationship, it taught me that I did not know who I was. And so I'll never regret any relationship, any situation that I've been in throughout my life because I see the lessons that it taught me and I see how God was literally with me the whole way. I just didn't understand it and I did not have any language for it. So like I said, that relationship taught me that I had no idea who I was. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was empty inside. I did not fully understand what love was. I thought it was based off of feeling. I didn't understand how to really give love because I thought it was based off of a connection. You got to be connected. And if you're not connected anymore, then you don't love the person. And that is all wrong. And so, what happened to me at 25, 26, 27, and beyond was a whole process of unveiling who Ashley was. And this is why I said I wanted to share with you all the journey of me and motherhood because I started off with no clue on what mothering was going to look like. And at a peak point, I realized I couldn't really mother from a place of purity because I didn't know who I was. I dealt with my own mother wound, mother issues, insecurities, fears. I was left alone a lot as a kid with my grandmother because my mom had to work. And although she was physically present, emotionally, she was very much unavailable. There was no affirmation in the home. There was no I love you in the home. There was no nurturing in the home. All of the things that I know now, I had no language for it then. I just remember how I felt. And I remember when my son was 7, my oldest son was 7 or 8. We had a moment in conversation and I asked him, how do you feel? And he told me, I don't like it when you yell at me. And I started crying, y'all, because I was like, oh my goodness. Here I am projecting my anger and frustration out on him. I don't have the language for what I'm feeling, but I just knew I was empty inside. And that conversation with him literally changed the trajectory of how I was going to mother both of my boys. I knew that I needed to do some internal work. I knew that I needed to confront my inner demons. I knew that I needed to confront. Now I have the language for it, that little girl within, that inner child, and go on a journey of healing and reparenting her. And since then, you all, it has been a beautiful, messy, scary, bright journey of healing. It has not stopped. it will never stop, but we become more aware of our triggers once we really address the trauma. Now, I want to say this as far as support is concerned. I have been blessed to have support for both my sons. It may not have come in the way in which I desired, but it has been there. God has been faithful to me, to this journey, and I have a responsibility to share my truth, to share my journey, and to bring others into courage, other moms, other dads into courage, even if you're not a mother or a father. I pray that it hits your ears and it causes for you to confront whatever it is that's impeding your progress in growing and in maturing in who you are called to be. Because I said this in the very beginning, and I will always emphasize this. Our role as a parent is one of the most important roles we'll ever play. But if you are unsure of who you are, if your identity is mixed, if you don't know how to give language to what you're feeling, it's going to be reflected in the way in which you parent. And I don't believe we do this intentionally. I think that when we think of generational curses and all of those things or unhealthy cycles, it's something that's been passed on to us. But there's always one that will be willing to break the cycle. And for me, I'm that one. And so on this podcast, you are going to get the raw truth, laughter, tears, transparency, vulnerability. We're going to dig into a lot of things. But just know you're not alone. You are not alone. Parents, this podcast, this community that is being built is for us. So share your story. I'm the big proponent in journaling. Journal, express yourself, get those emotions out because it is going to be so much better for you, for your child or children, and for the rest of your life.